The year was 2347, and humanity had been part of the galactic community for exactly 43 years. In all that time, they had been treated like children. The older species looked down on them. They laughed at human technology. They mocked human culture. They called humans the newcomers, the primitives, the lucky apes who had somehow stumbled into the stars. Jack Harrison had heard all of these insults before. He was the senior ambassador for the United Earth government, and he had spent 20 years listening to alien species tell him that humanity did not matter. Today was no different. He stood in the center of the Galactic Council chamber, surrounded by holographic projections of the most powerful beings in the known universe, and he listened to them threaten his entire world. High Chancellor of the Empire was speaking. His reptilian face filled the main display, his yellow eyes burning with contempt. They were one of the oldest species in the galaxy. They had conquered 40 star systems, and they believed that power gave them the right to take whatever they wanted. Earth will surrender its outer colonies within 72 standard hours, declared. His voice echoed through the chamber like a death sentence. The mining stations on Titan, the research facilities on Europa, the settlements on Mars, all of it now belongs to the Empire. Jack did not respond immediately. He looked around the chamber at the other species watching this moment, the with their silver skin and 4 arms, the with their bodies and clicking mandibles, the who existed as clouds of glowing energy. None of them said a word. None of them offered to help. "And if we refuse?" Jack asked calmly. Smiled, it was not a pleasant expression. "Then the Armada will reduce you to ash. We have 600 warships waiting at the edge of your solar system. Your defense fleet numbers what? 40 vessels, 50. You cannot win this fight, human. You never could." Behind Jack, Admiral Kate stood with her hands clasped behind her back. She was 62 years old and she had served in the United Earth Navy since she was 18. She had fought pirates in the asteroid belt. She had negotiated with hostile alien species. She had seen things that would break most people, but right now her face showed nothing. Not fear, not anger, just patience. She knew something that did not. She knew something that no alien species had ever discovered, and she knew that today was the day everything would change. The other council members began to speak. The ambassador expressed what she called deep concern. The representative suggested that humanity should accept the terms to avoid unnecessary bloodshed. The delegates simply stated that this was not their affair and that they would remain neutral. Jack listened to all of it. He had expected nothing more. In 43 years of galactic membership, humanity had never received help from anyone. They had been alone from the beginning, and they were alone now. Ambassador Harrison said, "Do you understand what will happen if you refuse? Your cities will burn, your people will die, your entire species could be wiped from existence. Is your pride really worth that much?" Jack thought about his daughter back on Earth. She was 12 years old and she dreamed of becoming an astronaut someday. He thought about the billions of people who were watching this broadcast, waiting to learn if they would live or die. He thought about everything humanity had built and everything they still hoped to achieve. Then he thought about what was hidden beneath the ice of Europa, what had been hidden there for 300 years. "High Chancellor," Jack said slowly, "humanity has always been underestimated. When we first developed fire, predators thought we were easy prey. When we first built cities, empires thought we were simple farmers. When we first reached for the stars, everyone said we would fail." He paused and looked directly at its image. "We did not fail, we never fail, and we do not surrender." The chamber erupted. Alien voices shouted in confusion and disbelief. The delegates laughed openly at what they saw as human arrogance, but Kate was already moving. She touched a small device on her wrist and sent a single coded message to Earth. 10,000 light-years away, in a bunker buried 2 miles beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Sam Griffin received that message. He was a large man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had been waiting for this day for his entire career. He had hoped it would never come, but he had always known it would. He picked up a secure communication device and connected to a facility hidden deep beneath the frozen surface of Europa. The line crackled for a moment, and then a voice answered. "This is Commander Ben Torres on the Sentinel, awaiting orders." Sam closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, his voice was steady. "Commander Torres, this is General Griffin. Authorization code Omega 77. Wake up the Sentinel, all of them." There was a brief pause on the other end. "Understood, General. Beginning activation sequence now. It has been an honor, sir." "The honor is mine, Commander. Show them what we really are." The line went dead. Back in the council chamber, Jack Harrison was still facing down the threat. The other species were watching with a mixture of pity and amusement. They all believed they knew how this would end. A tiny human fleet against 600 warships. It would not even be a battle. It would be a slaughter. "You have made your choice," said coldly, "and you will suffer for it. In 72 hours your world dies." Jack smiled. It was a strange expression for a man who had just been sentenced to extinction. 72 hours is a long time, High Chancellor. A lot can change in 72 hours. He turned and walked out of the chamber with Kate at his side. The doors closed behind them, and they were alone in the corridor. "It is done," Kate said quietly. "There is no going back now." Jack nodded. "I know, but I have faith in Ben and his crew. I have faith in what we built." Kate looked at him with something like respect. "You really think we can pull this off?" "I think humanity has been hiding in plain sight for 300 years. I think we have been playing the fool while we prepared for exactly this moment. And I think the galaxy is about to learn that the species they dismissed as primitive newcomers is anything but." Far away, beneath the frozen moon of Europa, something ancient and powerful began to wake from its long sleep. Lights flickered on across a hull that stretched for 12 kilometers. Systems that had been dormant for centuries hummed back to life, and a crew of 2,000 men and women prepared to show the universe what humanity was truly capable of. The countdown had begun. 300 years before the ultimatum, humanity had barely learned to travel between planets. The year was 2047, and the first permanent research station on Europa had just been established. It was a small outpost with only 30 scientists and engineers. Their mission was simple. They were supposed to study the frozen moon and search for signs of life in the ocean beneath the ice. Dr. Cole was 29 years old when he joined that mission. He was a physicist with a specialty in exotic materials. He had dreamed of space since he was a child, and Europa represented everything he had ever wanted. A chance to explore, a chance to discover, a chance to find something that no human had ever seen before. He found something far greater than he could have imagined. The drilling team had been working for 6 months when their equipment detected an anomaly. There was something buried beneath the ice, something massive, something that should not have been there. Remembered the day they first broke through. He remembered standing at the edge of that shaft, looking down into the darkness, and seeing something that made his heart stop. It was metal, but it was not any metal that existed on Earth. It was not any metal that existed anywhere in the known universe. It absorbed light in a way that seemed to defy physics. It was cold to the touch, but it hummed with energy that their instruments could not measure. It took them 3 years to excavate enough ice to understand what they had found. It was a ship, but calling it a ship felt like calling the sun a campfire. It was 12 kilometers long. Its hull was made of materials that their best scientists could not identify. Its internal systems were so advanced that they looked like magic. And it was empty. Whoever had built it, whoever had hidden it beneath the ice of Europa, they were long gone. They had left no message, no explanation, no clue about who they were or why they had put this impossible vessel in humanity's path. The governments of Earth argued for years about what to do. Some wanted to announce the discovery to the world. Some wanted to destroy it out of fear. But in the end, a decision was made that would shape the next 3 centuries. They would keep it secret. They would study it. They would learn from it. And they would wait. Commander Ben Torres knew this history better than anyone. He had studied it since he was a cadet. He had devoted his entire life to understanding the ship that humanity had named the USS Vanguard. And now, as he stood on its bridge and watched his crew prepare for battle, he felt the weight of 300 years pressing down on his shoulders. "All stations report ready, Commander," Lieutenant Amy Williams said from her position at the tactical console. She was 34 years old with sharp eyes and steady hands. She had been born on the Vanguard. Her parents had served on the Vanguard. She knew every system on this ship as well as she knew her own heartbeat. "Thank you, Lieutenant," Ben replied. He looked around the bridge at the faces of his crew. 2,000 men and women who had trained in secret for their entire lives. 2,000 men and women who were about to reveal humanity's greatest secret to a hostile galaxy. The bridge of the Vanguard was nothing like the bridges of human ships that the galaxy knew about. There were no physical controls, no buttons or switches or screens. Instead, the crew connected directly with the ship through neural interfaces. They thought commands and the ship responded. They asked questions and the ship answered. It was a level of technology that the Empire could not have imagined in their wildest dreams. "Commander," said Lieutenant Chris Palmer from the weapons station, "the dimensional drives are fully charged. We can make the jump whenever you give the order." Ben nodded slowly. The dimensional drives were perhaps the most incredible technology they had learned from the Vanguard. They did not travel through normal space. They did not use hyperspace corridors like the rest of the galaxy. Instead, they folded reality itself, moving from one point to another instantaneously. It was a power that should not have been possible, but the Vanguard made many impossible things possible. A communication signal beeped on the main console. It was General Sam Griffin calling from Earth. "Commander Torres," the general's voice came through clearly despite the vast distance. "The situation has developed as we expected. The fleet is moving toward Earth. Ambassador Harrison has refused their demands. It is time." Ben felt his pulse quicken, but his voice remained calm. "Understood, General. The Vanguard is ready. The Defiance and the Resolute are standing by." "3 ships," General Griffin said quietly. "3 ships against 600. The odds do not look good on paper." Ben allowed himself a small smile. "With respect, General, the odds are exactly what we want them to be. Let them think they are facing a desperate last stand. Let them believe they have already won. It will make the truth that much more devastating." There was a pause on the line. When Griffin spoke again, there was something like pride in his voice. "Your grandfather would be proud of you, Ben. He always believed this day would come." "I know, sir. I think about him every day." The connection ended and Ben turned to face his crew. They were all looking at him now, waiting, ready. "For 300 years," Ben said, "humanity has been preparing for this moment. Our grandparents discovered this ship. Our parents learned its secrets, and we have been chosen to carry its power into battle. I will not lie to you. What we are about to do will change everything. The galaxy will never look at humanity the same way again." He paused and let his words sink in. "But that is exactly what we want. We have hidden long enough. We have endured insults and threats and condescension for 43 years. Today we show the universe who we really are. Today we stand up. Today we fight. And today we win." A cheer went up across the bridge. It was not a loud cheer. It was not wild or uncontrolled. It was the sound of 2,000 people who had waited their entire lives for this moment finally seeing it arrive. Amy turned back to her console and began the final preparations. Chris checked the weapon systems one more time. Navigation officers plotted the jump coordinates. Engineers monitored the power core that burned with the light of a captured star. And deep in the heart of the Vanguard, something ancient stirred. The ship itself seemed to recognize what was happening. It seemed to understand that after 3 centuries of waiting, its purpose was finally about to be fulfilled. Ben sat down in the command chair. It molded itself to his body, connecting with his neural interface, merging his thoughts with the vast intelligence of the ship. "All hands," he announced, "prepare for dimensional jump. Destination is Earth orbit, coordinates directly between the fleet and we arrive in 5 minutes." He took a deep breath and looked out at the stars visible through the main viewport. "Let the galaxy see what humanity has been hiding. Open the door." The dimensional drives hummed to life. Reality began to bend around the vanguard, and somewhere in the darkness of space, a door between worlds began to open. Admiral of the Empire stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominance, and watched Earth grow larger on his. It was a beautiful world. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds swirling across its surface. It would be a shame to destroy it, but had his orders. The humans had refused to surrender, and now they would pay the price. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "we are detecting the human defense fleet. They have positioned themselves between us and the planet." "How many ships?" asked. 47 vessels, Admiral. Cruisers and destroyers mostly. Nothing larger than a battle cruiser." Let out a sound that might have been a laugh. 47 ships. He had brought 600. The humans were either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Perhaps both. "This will not even qualify as a battle," said Captain, his second in command. "It will be over in minutes." Nodded slowly. He almost felt sorry for the humans. They had shown such spirit in the council chamber. That Ambassador Harrison had looked him in the eye and refused to back down. It was admirable in a way, foolish but admirable. "Signal the fleet," ordered. "All ships advance. Weapons to full power. We will give the humans one final chance to surrender. If they refuse, we will begin the bombardment." The armada moved forward as one. 600 warships arranged in perfect formation, their weapons glowing with deadly energy. It was the largest fleet the Empire had ever assembled in one place, enough firepower to crack a planet in half. On Earth, billions of people watched the sky and prayed. Parents held their children close. Lovers said goodbye. Old men and women who had survived 100 smaller crises wondered if this was finally the end. In the command center beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Sam Griffin stared at the tactical display. The fleet was closing in. The human defenders were holding their position. And somewhere between Europa and Earth, 3 ships were making a journey that should have been impossible. "Come on, Ben," Sam whispered to himself. "Where are you?" Admiral was about to give the order to fire when something happened that made no sense. His sensors began to scream warnings. His flickered and distorted, and directly between his fleet and the human defense ships, space itself began to tear apart. It was not a wormhole, had seen wormholes before. They were stable, predictable, understood. This was something else entirely. It looked like someone had taken a knife to the fabric of reality and simply cut it open. Light poured out of the wound. Light that seemed to come from somewhere beyond normal space. Light that made his eyes water and his scales itch. "What is happening?" demanded. "What is that?" His tactical officer was staring at his console with an expression of pure terror. "Admiral, I am detecting something coming through. Something very large." Through the Terran space came a ship. Had seen many ships in his long career. Dreadnoughts that stretched for 3 kilometers, carriers that could hold 1,000 fighters, war platforms that bristled with weapons, but he had never seen anything like this. It was 12 kilometers long, 12 kilometers of dark metal and impossible technology. Its hull seemed to drink in the light of distant stars. Its weapon arrays glowed with power that made the output of his entire fleet look like candle flames. And wrapped around its bow was a symbol that recognized. A blue and green world surrounded by stars. The emblem of Earth. "By the ancestors," Captain breathed, "what is that thing?" Before could answer, another tier opened in space. A second ship emerged, just as large, just as terrifying. Then a third tier, a third ship. 3 vessels, each one bigger than anything the galaxy had ever produced. 3 vessels, hanging in the void between the Armada and the human defenders. 3 vessels that should not have existed, could not have existed, but were undeniably there. Across the galaxy, every species with the technology to monitor the situation was watching. The collective fell into stunned silence. The Dominion's War Council erupted in chaos. The delegate who had declared neutrality suddenly found himself wishing he had chosen a different stance. High Chancellor sat on his throne light years away and felt something he had not experienced in centuries. Fear. True, genuine, bone-deep fear. On the bridge of the USS Vanguard, Commander Ben Torres looked at the tactical display showing the fleet. 600 ships that had seemed so terrifying just moments ago now looked small, insignificant, like insects facing a hurricane. "Open a channel," Ben ordered. "All frequencies. I want every ship in that fleet to hear this." Lieutenant Amy tapped her console. "Channel open, Commander." Ben stood up from his chair. He straightened his uniform, and he spoke words that would echo through galactic history for centuries to come. "This is Commander Ben Torres of the United Earth Navy vessel Vanguard. I am addressing the fleet currently threatening our—" He paused to let that sink in. For 43 years, humanity has been part of the galactic community. In that time, you have mocked us. You have dismissed us. You have called us primitives and newcomers and lucky apes. You have threatened our colonies. You have demanded our submission. You have treated us with nothing but contempt. Ben's voice hardened. Today that ends. The ships you see before you are not new. They have been in our possession for 300 years. We found them. We studied them. We mastered them. And we kept them secret because we believed that power should not be used for conquest. We believed that strength should not be used for domination. We hoped that we would never need to reveal what we truly possessed. He gestured at the showing the Armada. You have taken that choice away from us. You came to our home with 600 warships. You threatened to murder billions of innocent people. You gave us no option but to show you the truth. Admiral listened to this speech with growing horror. His tactical officer was reading out numbers that made no sense. Power readings off the scale. Weapons systems that analysis. Shield technology that his computers could not even begin to understand. "Admiral," the officer said, his voice shaking, "those 3 ships, each one of them is generating more power than our entire fleet combined. Their weapons could destroy us in seconds. We have no defense against them. None." Gripped the arms of his chair until his claws left marks in the metal. He had made a terrible mistake. He had come here expecting an easy victory over a primitive species. Instead, he had found himself facing something from a nightmare. On the Vanguard, Ben Torres was finishing his message. "You have 2 options, Admiral. You can power down your weapons, turn your ships around and leave our solar system. Or you can stay and face the consequences. I give you 60 seconds to decide." The communication ended. Silence fell across the bridge. Every officer was looking at Admiral, waiting for his orders. Stared at the 3 massive ships on his. He thought about his orders from High Chancellor. He thought about his pride and his reputation and his career. Then he thought about the fact that he was probably about to die. "Power down all weapons," he said quietly. "Signal the fleet, we are withdrawing." Captain stared at him in disbelief. "Admiral, the High Chancellor will have your head for this." "Perhaps," replied, "but at least I will still have a head. Those ships could destroy us all before we even fired a shot. I may be a fool, but I am not suicidal. We are leaving." The fleet began to move. 600 warships turning away from Earth. 600 warships retreating from 3 vessels that should not have existed. And across the galaxy, the silence continued. because every species watching now understood that everything they thought they knew about humanity had been wrong. Everything they thought they knew about power and strength and the balance of galactic politics had just been turned upside down. Humanity had been hiding in plain sight for 300 years, and now the universe would never be the same. The fleet was withdrawing. 600 warships that had come to destroy Earth were now running away as fast as their engines could carry them. Admiral had ordered the retreat, and no one in his fleet had argued. They had all seen the three massive vessels blocking their path. They had all understood that continuing the attack would have meant certain death. But the withdrawal was not going smoothly. Captain noticed it first. 3 of the smaller cruisers at the rear of the formation were not following orders. Instead of retreating, they were accelerating toward the human ships. Their weapons were charging. Admiral said urgently, "The Ravager, the Vengeance, and the Iron Claw are breaking formation. They are moving to attack." Spun around to face the tactical display. His blood ran cold when he saw what was happening. "What are they doing? I gave the order to withdraw, all ships, no exceptions." "I am receiving a transmission from the Ravager," his communications officer reported. "Captain is saying that he refuses to flee from primitives. He says the honor of the Empire is at stake. He intends to prove that those human ships are not as powerful as they appear." Felt his scales pale. Captain was young and ambitious and incredibly stupid. He came from one of the noble families, and he had always believed that his bloodline made him invincible. Now he was about to get himself and his crew killed because he could not accept that humanity had beaten them. "Signal those ships immediately," ordered. "Tell them to stand down. That is a direct order from their commanding admiral." But it was too late. The 3 cruisers were already in range of the human vessels. Their weapons were firing. Beams of orange energy lanced out toward the USS Vanguard, striking its hull at multiple points. Nothing happened. The beams hit the Vanguard's shields and simply vanished, not deflected, not absorbed, just gone, as if they had never existed in the first place. The massive ship did not even seem to notice that it was being attacked. On the bridge of the Vanguard, Lieutenant Amy watched the incoming fire with a calm expression. "Commander, 3 cruisers are attacking us. Our shields are holding at 100%. The enemy weapons are having no measurable effect." Commander Ben Torres looked at the tactical display with disappointment rather than anger. He had given them a chance to leave peacefully. He had hoped they would take it. But there were always those who could not accept reality. There were always those who had to learn the hard way. "Target the attacking vessels," Ben ordered. "Weapons officer, I want precision strikes only. Disable their engines and weapons. Do not destroy them. I want those crews to live long enough to tell their story." Lieutenant Chris Palmer nodded and began entering commands. "Understood, Commander. Targeting solutions locked. Firing now." 3 beams of pure white light shot out from the Vanguard. They moved so fast that even the ship's sensors could barely track them. They crossed the distance to the attacking cruisers in less than a heartbeat, and they struck with surgical precision. The Ravager's engines exploded in a shower of sparks, not the reactor, not the fuel lines, just the engine pods themselves, sheared away from the hull as if cut by a giant blade. The ship went dark and began to drift helplessly. The Vengeance suffered the same fate. One moment it was accelerating toward the Vanguard with all weapons blazing. The next moment it was a dead hulk floating in space, completely powerless, completely harmless. The Iron Claw tried to turn away at the last second. It did not help. The beam from the Vanguard caught it perfectly, destroying every weapon on the ship without touching anything else. The vessel was intact. Its crew was alive, but it would never threaten anyone again. The entire attack had lasted less than 3 seconds. Admiral stared at his in horror. 3 cruisers disabled in the blink of an eye. 3 cruisers that had been crewed by over 2,000 soldiers, and the human ship had not even seemed to try. It had swatted them aside like insects. "Admiral," his tactical officer said in a voice that was barely a whisper, "the human ship is hailing us again." Closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, he looked like a man who had just aged 100 years. "Put it through." Commander Ben Tors appeared on the. His expression was calm, but there was steel in his eyes. "Admiral, 3 of your ships just attacked us despite your order to withdraw. We have disabled those vessels without killing their crews. This was a choice. We could have destroyed them completely. We chose not to." Ben leaned forward slightly. "Let me be very clear about something. The Vanguard, the Defiance, and the Resolute are not the limit of humanity's power. They are merely what we chose to reveal today. There is more, much more, power that you cannot imagine, power that we have kept hidden because we believe that true strength is knowing when not to use it." He paused to let those words sink in. "Take your fleet and go home, Admiral. Tell your High Chancellor what you saw here today. Tell him that humanity is not a species to be threatened or bullied or conquered. Tell him that we want peace, but we are prepared for war if that is what you choose." The transmission ended. Sat in silence for a long moment. Then he turned to his communications officer. "Signal the fleet. All ships maintain withdrawal speed. Send rescue shuttles to recover the crews from the disabled vessels, and prepare a long-range transmission to the High Chancellor." "What should the message say, Admiral?" the officer asked. "Looked at the 3 massive human ships one last time. Tell him that we made a mistake. Tell him that humanity is not what we thought. And tell him that if we ever threaten Earth again, there will be nothing left of the Empire but dust." Across the galaxy, the reaction to these events was immediate and overwhelming. The Galactic Council called an emergency session. Every species wanted answers. How had humanity hidden something like this for 300 years? Where had those ships come from? What else were the humans concealing? High Chancellor received Admiral's message and flew into a rage. He demanded a counterattack. He insisted that the Empire could not be humiliated by primitives, but his generals looked at the tactical data from the battle. They studied the readings from the Vanguard's weapons. They calculated how quickly those 3 ships could reach the if they chose to. And one by one, they told the High Chancellor that any attack on humanity would be suicide. On Earth, the mood was one of shock mixed with pride. Billions of people who had spent the last several days preparing for death now found themselves celebrating survival. They did not fully understand what had happened. They did not know where the great ships had come from or how long humanity had possessed them. But they knew one thing for certain. They were alive, and they were no longer afraid. General Sam Griffin stood in his command center and watched the fleet disappear into the distance. He was exhausted, he was relieved, and he was deeply aware that this was only the beginning. "Sir," one of his officers reported, "we are receiving messages from every major power in the galaxy. Even species we have never contacted before. They all want to talk." Sam nodded slowly. "Of course they do. Everything just changed. They need to understand what they are dealing with now." He looked up at the image of the Vanguard floating serenely in Earth orbit. 12 kilometers of ancient technology and hidden power. A gift from someone. A test from someone. A responsibility that humanity had carried in secret for 300 years. "Tell Ambassador Harrison to prepare for the busiest week of his life," Sam said. "The real work is just beginning." And far above the Earth, Commander Ben Tors stood on the bridge of his ship and wondered what the future would bring. They had revealed humanity's secret. They had shown the galaxy that humans were not the weak, primitive species everyone believed them to be. Now came the hard part. Now they had to figure out how to live in a universe that would never look at them the same way again. 1 week after the retreat, the Galactic Council convened for the most important session in its 8,000-year history. Every seat in the Great Chamber was filled. Every species, from the mightiest empire to the smallest independent world, had sent representatives. They had all come for the same reason. They needed to understand what humanity really was. Ambassador Jack Harrison entered the chamber with Admiral Kate at his side. He walked past rows of alien delegates who watched him with expressions ranging from fear to curiosity to grudging respect. These were the same beings who had laughed at him just days ago. They were not laughing now. The central podium had always been reserved for the eldest and most powerful species. Today, for the first time in galactic history, it was occupied by a human. Jack stepped up to the platform and looked out at the assembled representatives. High Chancellor was present via holographic projection. His scales had turned a sickly gray color, and he looked like a leader whose empire had just received a death sentence. The delegation sat in uncharacteristic silence, their arrogance replaced by something that looked very much like defeat. "Thank you all for coming," Jack began. His voice was carried to every corner of the chamber by the translation systems. "I know you have questions. I know you are afraid. I know that everything you believed about my species has been called into question. I am here to give you answers." He activated a holographic display that showed the three great ships orbiting Earth. The USS Vanguard, the USS Defiance, and the USS Resolute. These vessels were not built by human hands. We did not design them. We did not construct them. We found them. A murmur went through the chamber. Jack waited for it to subside before continuing. 300 years ago, long before humanity achieved faster-than-light travel, we discovered a chamber hidden beneath the ice of Jupiter's moon Europa. Inside that chamber were these ships, intact, functional, waiting. The ambassador raised one of her four arms. Who built them? Where did they come from? Jack shook his head. We do not know. In 3 centuries of study, we have found no records, no messages, no explanations. Whoever created these vessels, they left them for us to find. Whether it was a gift or a test, we cannot say. But they are ours now. They have been ours for 300 years. The representative clicked his mandibles in what might have been disbelief. You kept this secret for 3 centuries. Why? With that power, you could have conquered the galaxy. Yes, Jack said simply. We could have, we chose not to. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of as many delegates as he could. When my ancestors first discovered these ships, they faced a choice. They could use this power to dominate. They could build an empire greater than any the galaxy had ever seen. They could make humanity the supreme rulers of known space. Jack paused. They decided that was exactly the wrong thing to do. Power without wisdom is dangerous. Strength without restraint is tyranny. My ancestors understood that possessing the ability to conquer did not give them the right to conquer, so they hid the ships. They studied them. They learned from them. And they waited, hoping they would never need to reveal what they had found. High Chancellor's hologram leaned forward. Then why reveal them now? Why show the galaxy what you possess? Jack turned to face the leader directly. Because you gave us no choice. You came to our home with an armada. You threatened to murder billions of innocent people. You demanded our surrender or our extinction. In the face of that threat, we could not stay hidden any longer. He softened his voice slightly. But understand this. We did not want this confrontation. We do not want power over the galaxy. We want something much simpler. We want respect. We want to be treated as equals, not as primitives to be mocked and conquered. We want peace. The chamber was silent. Jack could see the delegates processing his words, trying to decide if they believed him. After 3 centuries of deception, trust would not come easily. Admiral Kate stepped forward. She had remained silent until now, but there was something she needed to say. I have served in the United Earth Navy for over 40 years, she said. I have known about the Vanguard and its sister ships for most of that time. I have watched humanity endure insults and threats because we believed that revealing our true strength would only lead to war. She looked at the delegation. We were right. The moment you learned what we possessed, Your first instinct was to attack. 3 of your cruisers opened fire on the Vanguard despite orders to withdraw. That is why we kept our secret for so long, because we knew that showing our power would make us a target. She turned back to the wider chamber. But secrets cannot last forever, and now that the truth is known, we must decide together what kind of galaxy we want to live in. Humanity is offering something unprecedented. We are willing to share what we have learned, not the weapons, not the ships themselves, but the knowledge, the science, the principles behind the technology we have spent 3 centuries studying. A ripple of surprise went through the delegates. The representative, a cloud of glowing energy, pulsed with colors that indicated deep interest. You would share your knowledge, they asked, freely, without conditions. Jack nodded. With conditions, but not the ones you might expect. We will share what we have learned with any species that commits to peaceful cooperation. We will help advance your technology. We will work alongside you to solve problems that affect all of us. In return, we ask only that the threats and the insults and the contempt end. We ask to be treated as partners, not as inferior beings. He looked around the chamber one final time. The galaxy has spent 8,000 years in a state of constant competition and conflict. Empires rise and fall. Species conquer and are conquered. It does not have to be this way. Humanity is proof that another path is possible. We had the power to dominate and we chose to cooperate. We had the ability to destroy and we chose to build. Jack stepped back from the podium. The choice is yours. Continue as you have always done, fighting each other for scraps of territory and power, or join us in building something new, something better, a galaxy where strength is used to protect rather than to conquer, where knowledge is shared rather than hoarded, where all species work together toward a common future. The chamber remained silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, the ambassador rose from her seat. She walked down to the central floor and stood before Jack Harrison. "The collective accepts your offer," she said. "We have seen what humanity is capable of. We have seen the restraint you showed when you could have destroyed the fleet. We believe that your offer is genuine." One by one, other delegates rose and came forward. The dozens of smaller species who had never had a voice in galactic politics. Even some of the delegates, against the clear wishes of their High Chancellor, stepped forward to express support. High Chancellor watched this happening with growing fury, but there was nothing he could do. His fleet had been humiliated. His threats had been proven empty. And now the galaxy was rallying around humanity rather than against them. 2 hours later, when the session finally ended, Jack and Kate walked out of the chamber together. They were exhausted, but there was hope in their eyes. "Do you think this will actually work?" Kate asked. "Do you think they will really change?" Jack looked up at the stars visible through the station's transparent walls. Somewhere out there, the Vanguard was keeping watch over Earth. Somewhere out there, the future was waiting to be written. "I do not know," he admitted, "but for the first time in 43 years we have a chance, a real chance. That is more than we had a week ago." Far away, on the bridge of the USS Vanguard, Commander Ben Torres was thinking similar thoughts. He stood at the main viewport, looking out at the planet he had sworn to protect. The crisis was over, but the work was just beginning. Lieutenant Amy joined him at the viewport. "The crew is wondering what happens next, Commander. Do we go back to hiding?" Ben shook his head. "No more hiding. Those days are over. From now on, we stand in the open. We watch, we protect, and we show the galaxy what humanity truly stands for." He turned to face her with a slight smile. "We spent 300 years in the shadows. Now we step into the light, and whatever comes next, we face it together." Amy nodded. "Together." Outside, the stars burned in the endless darkness, ancient and unchanging, but the galaxy beneath them was changing. Humanity had revealed its secret. The balance of power had shifted, and somewhere in the vast depths of space, The beings who had left those ships for humanity to find were watching, waiting to see what their gift would become. The story was only beginning.